When I was younger and just got into online college, I got my first apartment. I had 3 jobs, and one of them was third shift, but I was more than ready for independence. While I had a great time there, I did have one problem: my new downstairs neighbor. So the other tenants are a bit older than I am, with one of them being an old man who lived there for 20 years. The other was an older woman with a small kid, probably been there for about 3 or 4 years, in an empty apartment downstairs. I keep to myself, so I never really spoke to any of them before until I noticed that there was a new move-in. A man that seemed close to my age, maybe a little older. Black greasy hair and a little overweight. But in my experience living here, people seemed nice, and I was happy to possibly have someone to say hello to. That possibility turned sour really quick when a casual hello turned into "that trash stinks" remarks from him when I was taking out the trash, and snide remarks under his breath when I've done nothing to him. Even remarking on my sister's lack of bra when she came to visit me. Naturally, I was grossed out and annoyed that he had to comment on anyone, especially my sister, and told the landlord. Nothing came of it, of course. One day I was asleep and someone came banging on my door. I had no idea who it was, and my anxiety was beyond strong. I'm alone, and never expect a knock that wasn't planned. It was a neighbor, saying that I was being too loud, and I need to stop harassing him. I explained through a closed door that I was asleep, and that I was not making noise. He left, and stomped down the stairs while muttering and calling me a bitch. My heart felt like I was beating out of my chest. I went back to bed, only to hear him coming back up the stairs and bang on my door. When I addressed him again, he said that I was harassing him, and that he's calling the cops because I'm still making noise. I told him to ask the other neighbor because there's no way I could possibly be making noise when he is on the other side of the building. He thanks me politely before stomping off and cursing and calling me a bitch yet again. I tell the landlord right away that one of his tenants is acting hostile and that I don't feel comfortable or safe, and he tells me he will look into it. I hear nothing for a week. So as it turns out, it was the old neighbor hitting the floor with a stick like one of those classic cartoons because the rude neighbor was playing music too loud. I swear he should have known that, as I am on the other side. It was like he wanted an excuse to come speak to me. The following months, it only got worse. One day, I walked out in a snowsuit so that I could play in the snow. I know, I'm a big kid at heart. And he had to remark on my clothing being unnecessary, even when there's 3 feet of snow out. I forgot what I said in response, something like it's not his business, but he basically just said, "Fuck you." I just walked off to go play in the snow. It gave me little enjoyment because of the earlier interaction, so I went back home to get ready for work. The snowstorm got worse, and as I had just come up back from my night shift, I see him alone in the parking lot with the car on and the windows up. I was on high alert as I carefully walked around and up the alley to my apartment. The second I close the door to go upstairs, I hear loud, wall-shaking music. It's him. He's blasting his car music at max volume, in a snowstorm, at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was surprised and confused, because what was his reasoning? He did it until 8 o'clock in the morning, and I found out later it was to spite the old neighbor for telling him his music is too loud. Soon, it all started getting serious, cursing in the hallway and playing music louder, with the police knocking at our doors asking us about a noise disturbance, and now a mutual hatred amongst the neighbors at the asshole who kept us all up. But that's not the worst part. I just got back from my night shift, and it's 3 a.m. yet again. I'm dragging my tired feet over to the mailboxes that are right next to the townhouse door. As I'm looking through the ads and letters, his door opens up at the top of the stairs. My stomach tightens, as I'm hoping I don't have to interact with him, but drops when he starts speaking unintelligibly. At the top of the stairs, he was gurgling and mumbling something. "What?" I said, but he repeats the same weird sounds again, only more aggressive. I felt something was more than off, and I noped right around and out the door, heading back to my car. I thought, I'd rather sleep in my car than possibly be attacked in the hallway. As I'm having the thought, I hear the window above slam open. I freeze, and then spin back around the edge of the corner. It's him, and he's looking for me out the window. I stand there for a moment, listening to him, and he's speaking gibberish and yelling. I thought to myself that it was my chance to sneak upstairs, past his door, and into my own apartment. I sped up the stairs and past his door to the second flight. Right as I reach the top of the second flight, his door swings open with a big slam that makes me jump, and I hear him muttering and gibberishly speaking loudly while walking up the stairs right towards me. My heart is now beating out of my rib cage as I am simultaneously walking and fishing my keys out of my bag. Like a classic horror movie, I kept fumbling the keys looking for the correct one in the dark hallway as I hear him walking up the last couple steps. I mentally told myself not to panic as I spot the correct key and slide it into the keyhole on the first go. I swing the door open and practically launch myself inside before slamming it shut behind me. I pause and hold my breath as I hear him just 5 feet from my door, muttering gibberish and calling me a bitch before walking back downstairs and out the building. I watched him through a crack in my window blind, pacing back and forth, muttering, cursing, and at one point screaming before walking off into the night. With a little bit of relief, I head to bed, hoping he doesn't come back. The next day, I get a text from the landlord. He says that the guy was arrested and won't be coming back. Seems like he was off his meds again, and he attached a link in the text. Of course I raised an eyebrow to that comment, thinking, now you tell me. I never did see him again, just his family coming in and moving his stuff. So, to the off his meds rude neighbor, let's not meet again. Now this is something I really want to talk about to be sure that everyone is cautious and stays level-headed at all times. Now for context, I lived in the middle of nowhere in Canada. It was an old town that had quite a few abandoned buildings due to absence of residents. Me and many friends were tired of the lack of entertainment options for us, so what we did was explore these abandoned buildings. Prior to the experience I'm about to talk about, we never had anything too crazy happen to us. Occasionally, we'd see a small bit of blood-like liquid, and we did see a pentagram on the ground from someone who went to a house previously, but nothing too bad. That was, until the last time I had gone exploring abandoned buildings. Now, when I was younger, I used to go to a daycare that was part of a mental hospital. Weird combination, I know. It closed down due to a lack of patients and lack of children at the daycare. I decided to go back there with my friends a few years ago. For context, I was 15 when this happened. Most of our friends were the same age. When we did get there, it was rather cliché. There was fog, it was rather dark, and there was a light drizzle of rain. We went to the main gate, which was padlocked shut. We decided to help each other hop over it and made a ton of noise. We were laughing and giggling the whole time, unsuspecting of what was to come. We looked around the small play place/park with flashlights we had on our person. Even with our somewhat powerful flashlights, our visibility was rather limited. We decided to enter the decaying building. Glass and dirt crunched under our feet as we stepped into the daycare section of the complex. There were still old Legos, wood chips from previous furniture, old torn dolls, and toys strewn about. The further we walked around the daycare section, we naturally became more and more silent, until all we could hear was the crunch of the dirt under our feet. I found some crayons in a plastic container in the corner of the room. I walked over to pick them up, when all of a sudden, we heard a loud crash coming from behind a metal door leading to the psych ward part of the building. My friends and I all looked at each other. As a whole, we were a group of 5. Most of them were very bold and cocky. We all looked at each other when my friend Brian suggested we go and look to see where the sound really came from. Personally, I was not fond of the idea, but with my group of friends, there was no way anyone was going to decline such a thing. We all stacked up on the door and opened it. It was rusted to the floor, and we heaved to get it open. As we walked in, the metallic smells and must became stronger, with a hint of something else which I couldn't put my finger on at that moment. We walked in, our flashlights pointed in every direction, with Brian leading the group. The hallways were tight, and to the left and right were the occasional metal doorway, some with doors open. I felt slightly claustrophobic, and it felt a little hard to breathe. As we continued, Brian shone his flashlight into a room and recoiled. We all stopped walking as Brian slowly entered the room. "What is it?" I asked him. "I thought I saw someone here. It seems all fine now." To be honest, I thought he was just messing with us to increase our anxiety, but looking back, I think he was completely honest. He backed out of the room, and we continued walking deeper into the psych ward when another friend swiftly told us to stop. We came to a halt and all listened in. In the distance ahead of us, we heard the subtle pitter-patter of footsteps echo through the hallway. We all looked at each other, fear in each of our eyes. Brian continued walking towards the sounds. We considered turning back for a second without Brian, wondering if some ghost or something was in the building, but we couldn't do that to him. The closer we got, the more I felt like I was being watched. When finally, we entered a room on the right which had the smell of rotting meat. In the front of us was a dead deer. Its innards were spilled all over the floor, staining the concrete. A friend of mine had a very weak stomach and vomited all over the floor. That's when we heard whispering from somewhere. Brian shone his flashlight to the corner of the room, where a man with short hair was standing with his head down. He wore a bright green t-shirt, stained with what I assume was blood, and torn beige pants. He did not have any socks, and his feet seemed damaged. He was twitching sporadically and continued to mumble even after we saw him. We stared at him for a solid 30 seconds before he made his first true movement. He looked up at us with a haunting grin that sent shivers down our spine. "You guys here for the feast?" He said each word with varying inflection and energy. This kicked us over the edge, and we bolted out of that room all the way back to the daycare center. The door was still open, and we decided to slam it shut, but the rust and pure weight of the door almost kept it open. It took 3 of us pulling with all of our strength to close it, and just before we did, I could still see the silhouette of the man watching us, his white teeth being the only other human feature I could see. As we sat behind the metal door, catching our breath for a second, all looking at each other for confirmation that we all saw the same thing, after a little bit of labored breathing from each of us, we heard a light tapping on the door. That's when we decided that it was time to leave. We booked it out of the vicinity completely and ran home. A year after we visited that spot, police went back to do a routine search of the area and found the man. It was stated that this guy used to go to the psych ward before it closed down. He escaped the facility that he was transferred to and lived off the wildlife around the complex. When the cops brought him in, he had a series of diseases and sicknesses from eating raw meat. His mental condition was much worse than before. There were future rumors that he did kill someone in the forest while searching for food, but nothing has been confirmed. In the end, guys, be careful, especially in dangerous areas such as abandoned buildings. And creepy dude, let's not meet.